All right, everyone, we are back with another Ramp Careers Daily Update. I'm joined by both co-founders today, Mitch and Manoj. Fellas, how are you?
Doing well, Danny, my favorite part of the day. And Mitch, thank you for gracing us with your presence today.
I'm doing great. Manoj, you missed out yesterday, so glad to have you back here.
It's been a journey, but yeah, this is something I look forward to every day, getting to speak with you both about a meaty topic and just shooting the breeze a little bit. So today we want to talk about something that's happened to all of us, sales somewhat frequently, unfortunately. It's what to do when you get hung up on when you're on the phone with somebody. So let's unpack this a little bit. There's a few options. Let's start with the precursor. So why do people actually hang up on you? Mitch, I know you have some comments here. What do you think?
Yeah, Danny, I've unfortunately been hung up on a couple of times in my sales career. So a couple of things I think could be for a number of reasons. So maybe the prospect simply is annoyed with you, right? You're calling them out of the blue. You're a cold call. I've hung up on telemarketers before as well, right? So you could just be annoying them. It could be because they're not listening to you and they're busy. They got other stuff going on and maybe there's something better to do. So they hung up on you. Maybe it was simply a mistake. Maybe, I don't know, Manoj doubts that ever happens, that it's a mistake, but maybe they hit end by accident. Maybe their provider dropped the call.
I think that's about right, Mitch. I agree with most of what you said. The clumsy piece, I know you and Danny think that accidents happen and people hang up on you by mistake, but my feeling is that's kind of what you tell yourself, console yourself after someone hangs up on you. I don't know how likely that is. I feel like people are either truly busy and you caught them at a bad time. They're in the middle of a meeting. That's likely. Another thing is, they don't want to talk to you. It's a cold call. You haven't. Maybe it's the way you sound. Maybe it's the way you started the call. They just know that they're going to be sold and they may not be in the mood for it at that point in time. And that's another reason why people might just hang up on you. It's very rare for folks to hang up on you in the middle of a conversation. And you guys tell me at what point that happens. It has to be in the first few seconds, right? It's very rare for you to have a conversation with someone where you've pitched something and they've responded, then they hung up on you. I don't think that's what happens. It's probably in the first, 5-10 seconds where they hear the first thing you say and then they just hang up.
It's an instant reaction, right? And I think you touched on something critical, which is they think their perception is they're about to be sold, which a lot of people will pull back from any situation where they feel like they're going to be sold or pigeonholed into something or tricked into something. And I think we'll kind of touch on that at the end of the conversation today on ways to avoid that perception or avoid coming off as a sleazy salesperson.
Yeah. Danny, the question to you is, if that's the case, and if the reality is that the risk of folks hanging up kind of decreases as your conversation progresses, is it safe to say that your opening sentence is a subject line equivalent for an email, and you kind of think about cold calls the same way you think about sending emails? Keep your opening line super tight because that's going to inform whether you will earn the right to engage with someone with additional sentences or additional stuff that you have to say. And also timing, right? How and when you call somebody, very similar to when do you email folks. That also kind of informs whether they'll click your email and whether they'll read it further. So I wonder if that's the case, then maybe the thing that you can control the most is probably your opener.
Yeah, your opener and how you deliver that opener. And yes, you're right. The time of the call, and it matters as well. The important thing, though, is not necessarily what you say, it's how you say it. I sat next to somebody back in the day at Groupon that legitimately would make a cold call. He would just call down his list of prospects. And the first thing he would ask them every single time was, have you had your coffee today? And it was just so out there that people would respond positively, because who says that on a cold call? No one says that. So it's a little bit out there, but it broke through the noise and it really humanized the sales process. Not something I ever experimented with, nor do I think I could probably pull that one off, but it really worked for him and it was awesome. So now that we've established, though, I think it's important to talk about how we deal with that in the moment and then talk through what it looks like to give yourself the best opportunity going forward so that that doesn't happen. So Manoj, talk to me about how to deal with that in the moment. So you call somebody, you're all hyped up, you give them your pitch, and then boom, they hang up. What now?
Yeah, so a couple of things you could do. I think you can get a pulse of when they hang up, right? So let's say, honestly, you shouldn't be giving your pitch. My view on this is get their buy-in before you pitch them, right? So I think you should get that verbal contract from them before you go ahead and even share what it is that you do or go into your elevator pitch. That's kind of put that out there. Someone hangs up on you. I mean, realistically, what can you do, man? Couple of things. One is I'm a big fan of setting aside blocks of time to go through your calls and just move on to the next one, right? Don't sit, don't sulk. Move on to the next one. That's one approach that you can take. Another approach, depending on your level of comfort and how much you want to hustle and how comfortable you are with doing it, is give them a call back and saying, hey, it looks like we got disconnected. Even though you knew full well that someone hung up on you, you can call them back and try it. I'm 50-50 on this because on the one hand, you might be able to recapture somebody that may not have wanted to talk to you in the beginning. But on the flip side, you're going to piss someone off even more. Right? If someone didn't want to talk to you, the fact that you called them back and saying, hey, I thought you got disconnected, might tick them off even more. So I'm 50-50 on it. I'm not against it because I do think that with the right attitude and with the right delivery, and if you have a pleasant disposition, you might be able to convert folks. But if cold calling isn't your strength, and depending on what your, I guess, risk tolerance is for picking people off, especially if you think that these are super high value prospects, you don't want to get on their bad side. My suggestion would be move on, right? You can get them the next day. Nothing's going to change, right? One day is not going to move the needle significantly. So just go through your call blitz, hit them up tomorrow, the next day. You can even say, hey, look, I tried calling you yesterday. I might have caught you at a bad time, right? That's to me, that's more my style, but there are folks that want to, go at it again. So those are the two things you can do. But bottom line is, regardless of the approach you take, sulking over it or taking it personally, man, it's a numbers game at the end of the day. I mean, you're going to get rejected left, right, and center. And, to me, this is no different than making friends or trying to go on a date with somebody. You just have to ask.
You crushed it, right? To summarize that, I think you did a great job there. It's call them again. You can call your list again. You have to do it with enthusiasm. And what's not an option is sulking and letting it get to your head, because it's just going to happen. It's the nature of sales. So Mitch, we've unpacked why and how to deal with it in the moment. How do you ensure that this never happens again, or as little as possible in the future?
Yeah, I don't know if you can assure it never happens, but just open your call a little differently to at least give you a fighting chance here for cold calls. And it's simply getting that verbal contract from the prospect to actually talk with them. And for a simple script here, what I typically would use is something like, hey, Mr. and Mrs. Prospect, this is Mitch calling from, XYZ company. Do you mind if I take 30 seconds to tell you why I'm calling? And then you can decide if it makes sense for us to keep talking. So you're putting it on them to make the decision. They're basically the gatekeeper. Thumbs up, thumbs down. Do we continue the discussion? There's probably like a mixed debate out there on if this is a good opener or not. The proponents would say this is great because they're giving you permission to continue. And if they give you a thumbs up, then you've really got them locked into whatever you're going to say next. They're all ears. If they give you a thumbs down, then you may have to fight or kind of try to win their permission to keep calling or keep talking, or at least send them something to follow up. The opponents of this would just say that that's so silly. Why would you ever give someone the chance to shoot you down? You should shoot your shot and then let them shoot you down. In my experience, or and personally for me in cold calling, I much rather get their buy-in up front and their permission. I don't know which side of the fence you guys fall on that. I've seen people be really successful just pitching right away, basically trying to cram it in as quickly as possible. But I think that with the teams I've ran, the data shows that asking for permission up front gives you a better fighting chance. What do you guys think?
Yeah, I think you're right there. It gives them the opportunity to say yes. And then once they say yes, you've earned the next segment of the conversation where you actually can deliver value and hammer relevance and start your formal quote unquote pitch, although it doesn't have to be super formal on the intro call. Asking that up front and getting their buy-in is a great tactic to avoid the hang up. The other thing that I was thinking about is, the other thing that I have seen work really well is hammering relevance on a personal level. You're calling them as a salesperson. The relationship has a little bit of friction. So what you can do to soften that is take the time to look them up on LinkedIn, get to know their online presence, get to know if they've written any blogs, if they're in YouTube videos, if their Twitter's available, like who are they as a person, and look for some tidbits that you can share in a story. So using myself as an example here, when somebody cold calls me, if they mention the University of Michigan in the opening line, they mention my time at Groupon, like they've won the conversation, right? I will speak with them. I'll give them the time of day. If they just jam their pitch down my throat, typically that's when I hang up. Or if they're straight up solicit, I will sometimes hang up too.
How would somebody weave that in a relevant manner, right? Or is it just simply like the fact that they did research, you give them the door, you open the door, or is there a way to do that? Like, hey, Danny, I saw you went to Michigan and my product helped, students at Michigan. I don't know, like, how does that part of the pitch, or is it just simply like, okay, they did research. I give them the day. I give them the time.
It's a little nuanced, something like, hey, Mitch, look, I noticed you went to UNC. We're working with X, Y, and Z folks who are also UNC grads, something like that. Just know that.
You can tell Danny's a better salesperson than me.
It's just that little extra touch that shows,
yeah,
okay, I'm not just some silly salesperson that is dialing down a list and doesn't know who my prospect is. It doesn't have to be the University of Michigan. That's more for, honestly, just for me.
yeah, of course.
Listen, I'm making this up, right? But if I had to be super creative, one way you could weave that in is when you ask someone, right, when you say, hey, do I have permission to pitch or continue the rest of the conversation? You can end that sentence by saying, I promise I won't talk about sports at UNC, right? Something. You can always weave it in, right? There's ways you can do it. Call it appealing to someone's ego because they feel good that you've done some research. Call it, it helps them recall pleasant memories or associate you with something that they enjoy. That's probably more it than anything else. I think it's less about appealing to someone's ego. It's more about if you bring up something that they enjoy or you think they enjoy, they're immediately going to tie that to you and make it for a slightly more pleasant conversation. But all I'm hearing both of you guys say is keep it a little more human, keep it conversational. That's another thing, man. These cold call scripts, they need to change. Like I hear people reading off, we help companies streamline and automate. That is not a pitch, man. Who speaks like that? Just stop it.
Like, jargon, too much jargon. We got to run for today, but this has been awesome. Good discussion on a topic that we are all somewhat close to. So for Mitch, Manoj, and I, this has been another Ramp Careers Daily Update. We'll see you tomorrow, everybody.
Sounds good, guys.